Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the NOTCAST. It's the 31st of October 2020. I think it's day 220 of the lockdown. In about 3/4 of an hour, there's going to be a press conference by our awful Prime Minister, who will probably announce another lockdown that will last for a further month. But since it's the 31st of October, today I'm going to talk about something that's pertinent to the day as opposed to the politics, which is that it is Halloween, and to talk about the supernatural, to talk about horror movies and things like that. So the answer, or more correctly, the question which you're not asking is, what is the greatest horror movie of all time? There it is. It's The Thing. That's the best horror movie of all time. We don't need to discuss it anymore. Obviously, I'm wearing a Ghostbusters top, so what I'm going to talk about is not, for example, which Halloween movie is the best. I have 4 of them. Halloween 3 is the best because it doesn't have Michael Myers in. That's a controversial opinion, and one I will come back to when I run out of other things to talk about. So today we're going to talk about the supernatural, the paranormal, ghosts, and are they real? Well, to start off with, you've got to take the words of Carl Sagan into account, or it might have been Arthur C. Clarke, but I prefer Carl Sagan, which is that you either have to accept the possibility that we are alone in the universe, or we are not, and either of those concepts is absolutely terrifying. Either humanity is alone in the universe with the things that we can see, or we are not. If we are on our own, that is it, and there's no God, no religion, none of it exists. Or we have to be open to the possibility that things that are beyond human understanding and comprehension exist and are real. And I think my view very, very clearly is that in terms of things like the paranormal, the supernatural, ghosts, aliens, and so on and so forth, that they are real. But we as humans do not have the biological ability to see them. Now, I will also kind of point out that there's a very simple biological reason behind that. Now, the first thing I'm going to mention is, and this I think, if you're a Beatles fan, you will know this already, is that if you listen to this record here, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band, at the end of A Day in the Life, in the run-out groove on the last side of the album, there is a sub-audible frequency that is a dog whistle. So if you're listening to A Day in the Life and it's stuck in the grooves of the needle as it goes around and around, and your dog has a funny look on its face, and you're going, well, hey, Fido, what's up? Well, the simple reason is there is an audio signal in the end of the song that only dogs can hear. Humans can't hear it. Humans have a limited auditory range. We have a limited visual range. We are limited into what we can see and what we can hear, and that is not the entirety of everything that's around us. Now, for example, if I was to use my mobile phone to make a call right now, there would be radio waves that would be transferring to the nearest satellite transmission telephone mast. We can't see those. There are radio waves from FM, AM, medium wave that are floating around in the air right now that are invisible to humans. We can't see them, we can't feel them. We know they're there. Wi-Fi is everywhere, and we can't see that. So I'm going to talk about animals. So the visual range of a human, by the way, and this is where I'd like to thank Wikipedia for its help. The visual range for humans is much, much smaller than a lot of animals that there are, and I'm going to go and get the numbers off Wikipedia whilst I'm typing. But first and foremost, there are some animals that have a far wider visual range than humans. There is a shrimp called the mantis shrimp that receives colours in 12 different sets. So, for example, the human eye can see colours in 3 sets, which is variations of red, blue, and green. The mantis shrimp can see 12 different colours. A dragonfly has 33 different visual receptors, and so the mantis shrimp and the dragonfly are, put bluntly, tripping balls in terms of colour, because they can see colours we can't imagine. They can see colours which we will never even think of names. Now, the human visual range is around 380 to 740 nanometers, or 405 to 790 THz in terms of a frequency. But the frequency that we've got for some of the other animals is absolutely enormous. And for example, one of the other things that we do have is, also animals have different ways of seeing and perceiving light. So I think I'm going to mention that the mantis shrimp can also see polarity or polarization in light, which is something that humans can't see. So the best way to imagine that is the frequencies of the light and the color that are floating through it. So it's almost like a dynamic, tangible, organic kind of thing that changes. So if you've got a dog, for example, it's during the end of a day in the life, he's hearing things us humans just can't hear. If a cat is staring intently at a wall, it's hearing things we can't hear. It's seeing things that we can't see. And for example, so if a cat is staring at a wall, he's probably hearing, I don't know, a mouse behind the walls, or he might be hearing just tiny little flakes of plaster that are coming off inside the chimney breast, things that we can't conceive. Or it could be your cat seeing a ghost. Now, what I'm going to point out is there's as best as can be, here's a simulation of the difference between a human and a cat's vision. So what you can see there is human vision has far more reds in it, it's brighter, but a cat's vision is far more precise, and it's also linked to, for example, movement. So cats can see movement in a very granular level in a way that humans can't perceive. Eagles can see 8 times further than a cat can, and so an eagle can see a rabbit at 2 miles away and can see whether it's moving, and then it makes a decision. Well, that's dinner. I'd like to meet it. Whereas, obviously that's something that humans can't do as well. Some animals really, really strongly perceive movement in a way in which humans can't perceive. So what we're seeing actually is, I think, for example, if you want to go ghost busting, you might as well just take a dog with you, and the dog will do a lot of the work for you. The dog will be able to see things that you can't see, but there are things that humans can perceive around the paranormal and around, and there are things that humans detect whether we know them or not. You go into certain rooms and you feel different around going into those rooms. Almost as if on an inarticulate level, we can sense a change in the atmosphere in that particular room. And I've been in rooms where bad things have happened, and sometimes they leave odors there, or traces, like the smell of burnt toast that hangs around in the air for a while afterwards. That stuff's real, and you go into a room and you just get a sense of something bad happened in this room, or something good happened in this room. Not that I have been there, but I hear that there are some people that when they walk into, for example, Auschwitz, they really do get a sense of immense sadness, kind of like a budget human version of Troy from Star Trek: The Next Generation. But what I'm going to talk about now actually is about my first experience with either the paranormal or the supernatural, depending on how you want to describe it, which was in 1997, and at that time I was going out with a girl from the West Midlands. I was 23 years old. I had a full head of hair. Not that you could necessarily ever believe I ever had a full head of hair. And the house that she was living in had been built in something like about 1840, and it had some. I was told it had some ghosts in it, and over time I kind of learned that it was a house that had an awful lot of people had passed through that house. A lot of people had a lot of very good memories. Some of it came from the time when they had servants or butlers or staff, and I was told that and certainly I could hear it as well, is that it was a 6-bedroom house, huge house, and a house like that just makes noises. And you just hear a creak or a crunk or something somewhere, or you hear someone talking. And sometimes we'd be in the living room with the dog, and the dog just go, and the dog was looking at someone that we couldn't see. And they'd grown up in this house, they'd been there for 15, 20 years, so they were very much like, it's one of the ghosts. And I was like, that shit's weird, but you go with it. And you find out what happens. Sometimes you'd hear voices talking in other rooms, and you knew that you were the only person in the house or the only people who were in. When they were thinking about selling the house, keys would go missing, wallets would go missing, and when they stopped talking about moving out of the house or selling the house, things like missing keys just stopped happening. It just didn't happen anymore. Um, so it's almost as if the house was part of or more correctly, the ghost and the spirit in the house were part of the house itself. Um, I heard voices, coming from the kitchen when I knew the kitchen was empty. You could hear children's voices talking and playing in other rooms. You could hear the dull murmur of men's voices talking in empty parts of the house. It was quite strange actually, but it was normal. And it's amazing how quick the human being adapts to what is normal. Um, and I also had an experience with a ghost that I didn't see. And by the way, when you see a ghost, they don't look like that. Not at all. No, they don't. They look very different. Sometimes, when I first saw a ghost, or more correctly, when I first encountered the ghost or one of the ghosts that lived there, we'd been going out for probably 2 months or so, I would have thought. And I'd become a kind of like a regular fixture. I'd become somebody that wasn't just passing through. I was becoming one of the people that was at that house on a regular basis. And being 23, been out for a drink. Where it was early-ish February, maybe middle of February. Had a fair bit to drink. Because when you're 23, you think you can drink your body weight in anything, don't you? Had something to eat, had a bit of a giggle, came home. We were sleeping in separate rooms at the time, the reason for that. And at about 4:10 in the morning, I woke up. And I shouldn't have woken up at about 4:10 in the morning. I should have been asleep. But I woke up and I knew I wasn't going to get back to sleep in a hurry. It was one of those times when you wake up in the night and it's not the end of a dream or anything like that. Something's going on. And your body goes, this isn't quite right. Something's happening. Something strange is going on here. And what happened was, the house had been fully locked up at the end of the night. So you'd had the alarms had been switched on, the motion sensors had been switched on. The motion sensors didn't detect dogs, by the way, because otherwise the dog would always be setting off the alarm. And what I woke up and I didn't have my glasses on. Now, bear in mind, if I take my glasses off, I can see probably about that far, maybe about 6 inches or something like that. Not that far at all. So what I was seeing, because I was really tired, I should have been asleep, but I couldn't be asleep. My body was wired. My body had detected something was going on. And so I was in bed. I was staring at the ceiling at 4:10 in the morning. I looked down and I heard a click. And I saw a thin strip of light that came in from underneath the gap between the door and the floor that rolled out. I'm like, right, someone downstairs has switched the light on. Someone's doing something. And then there was a set of stairs that Wayne turned around and went back up. So I heard the footsteps, light footsteps, but still footsteps, climbing up the steps. Probably took about that long to come up. And there's this, the bedroom was you came into the bedrooms, hallway, bedroom was there, some other bedrooms here and some other bedrooms there. So let's say, whatever it was, the sound of the footsteps walked towards the door of the room and then stopped. And I heard, the door, the doorknob just turn around like that. And the door didn't open. I looked, I couldn't see any feet there. I just pure white light coming out through the bottom of the door. And what happened next, I saw in my mind. I didn't see with my own eyes, but I felt that someone was in the room. And I felt that someone was an older gentleman, felt that he was quite well dressed, and he walked over to the bed, and he looked at me, and I can't remember a face. But I remember feeling very, very, very clearly that someone had come to visit me, to check me out, and to see who I was, try and assess how I was going to fit in, and if I was going to fit in, and who I was, as I was a new face in the house. And again, it was about 10 past, quarter past 4 at this point. So the whole thing took maybe 5-6 minutes. And then I looked at the clock. Well, luckily, I had the clock was really, really near to me. And I was so tired. Also, when you're at that age and you've drunk a fair bit, you start to. I was very sober. So I sobered up very, very quickly. I became very, very alert to what was happening. Very, very aware. It was one of those things where you've had a bit of the drink, but on the same point, whatever is going on, it's so serious, you almost sober up in a flash. You become very, very aware. And I don't remember any more than that. And I remember I fell back to sleep. I was so tired. And I woke up in the morning, and we came downstairs, talking over breakfast. My then girlfriend and her sisters were talking. They were like, did you hear something last night? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, yeah, we heard it too. So they were often, they're in the room next to me, hearing the same thing, seeing the same strip of light underneath there. And they were like, yeah, something happened last night. And they asked me about it, and I talked about it, and I said, well, this is what happened to me, and I think that's what happened. And then, my girlfriend said, I've had that happen. I've had voices call me mummy while I've been in the kitchen, and I had to say, look, I'm not your mummy. I'm not going to be able to help. And I kind of said somewhat casually, but also kind of quite seriously that, I said, look, I don't mind. I'm happy to go habit with these ghosts, but I really don't want to be woken up in the middle of the night because I have a terrible time getting to sleep, and it's a little bit scary, and I don't want to be scared, and I was never bothered again in that house. I did say somewhat flippantly, said, if you want to move things around, can you do the washing up, please, because it always needs to be done. And I got the impression that they appreciated that, and we respected each other. So I said to them in the kitchen when there was no one else around, I went, guys, I know you came to visit me. I just want you to know that I find that stuff a little scary. It's nothing to do with you. And I'd really like it if you just let me sleep, because I really like sleep and I don't sleep very well. I kind of just spoke to them as if they were people, on a considerate side. I wasn't bothered again in that house, but I was very, very clear on what I knew straight from that moment, at that time when that thing was happening in the middle of the night, was that whatever it was that was happening was so far beyond my sphere of influence. I am, to quote Star Trek, an ugly bag of mostly water, with a limited visual range, a limited hearing range, and I'm just, sack of meat, really. I'm a bloke. The things that they could influence, the areas that they operated in, were so far beyond my area of influence. I couldn't control, influence, change behaviour in a way in which I understood. So I just hope that we would have a peaceful coexistence with whomever else lived in that house. Oh, pardon me. I don't know why I'm yawning. It's not a scary thing. I wasn't scared at all. I was just hoping that their better nature was on my side. One of her sisters had a boyfriend who had a temper, and he lost his temper outside of the house. And then later that night, when he was at home and he was asleep, he woke up and he felt this presence or this pressure that was sitting on him, and he couldn't move and he couldn't speak, and he could open his eyes but he couldn't see anything, and he was really, really scared. And the next morning, and we were around the table. This happened about 2 months after. The next morning, we were around the table, and he was talking about that. And his girlfriend, my girlfriend's sister, said, "They're sending you a message. Yeah, they've noticed what's happened. They're looking out for me. They want to make sure that you're not going to be hurting anybody." And he didn't, and it all worked out okay. But it was really, really interesting and eye-opening to go through that experience, and to think that, the things that you think as a human being, you think, oh, we've got control, we've got power, we can, we can exert influence, we can change things, we can destroy buildings, we can, make fall in love, we can do all these things that humans can do. But there are limits to what any human being can do. There are things we just can't see, things we just can't hear, things we just don't detect. It's not that they're not there, it's just we haven't been able to detect them. We haven't been able to work out, how we see them. So the world is far more complicated. Now, even right now in this very room, there's a countless number of things that are happening in this room that are just can't. You look in an empty room, it's not empty. There's Wi-Fi that's going through that. There's radio waves that are going through that. There's psychic energy. There's all this stuff that's going on. And I don't think that's too controversial to say. Is that, in my opinion, there is some form of consciousness after death, and life after death in some form does happen. That energy forms and changes, the character and substance of a place, and that it is real, and it is tangible, and you can experience it. And sometimes, humans, sometimes we can hear them, sometimes we can see them, sometimes we can see objects that they're able to move or interact with. But generally speaking, our perceptions of the world, visually, orally, and in other areas, are quite limited. If a mantis shrimp can see 12 types of colour, where we can only see variations on 3, you can guarantee that mantis shrimp can see stuff that we can't see. If an eagle can see a rabbit moving at 2 miles away and we can't see it, guarantee that rabbit's seeing some stuff. Dogs and cats can hear and see things that we as humans can't see. So, pardon me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap up here and really just give you that's my Halloween story. That's about the first time that I encountered something I can't explain. I have no rational explanation for it. There's no logical explanation for it, aside from it was almost definitely the most logical explanation that I can reach is that it was a presence or spirit from that escaped the mortal coil and now existed beyond that. And it was real. There's no two ways about it. If it was it was experienced by multiple people in multiple rooms, hearing and seeing the same things happening at the same time, feeling the same feelings, hearing the same noises, knowing the same things were happening. So it was real, and that's really it. I'm going to wrap up here. But what I'm going to tell you is just very, very clearly is that in my opinion, on the basis of my experiences, and what I've been able to see and hear and feel, is that ghosts are real, and some form of life beyond after death happens, which is inherently both fascinating and slightly scary, but also that I am not unique in this. I don't think that ghosts really lend them. So someone's going to go, well, why aren't there any photographs of them? I mean, you do realise that cameras don't have a certain visual range as well. Now, in the olden days, by the way, for example, if you had a remote control and you pointed it, see, you can see that, can't you? You can see that I'm pressing the button on there, but if I look at that, I can't see anything. And there are other things that cameras can't see that are also real. So, I'm just going to let you know that, you know, these are real, and we should, as humans, probably be a more enlightened species than we collectively are around our place in the world. You know, we aren't controllers and masters of our destinies, and we don't control and master the universe. We are custodians of this planet for a short period of time, and our job is to, look after it, and to make baby people, and to try and be the best people that we can be. And there is my Halloween story, about the first time I encountered some form of ghost. Is almost definitely what it was. I can't think of any other explanation for it. But in the meantime, I will do another podcast shortly. It's probably not going to be themed around Halloween, and I will, if you've got any comments, any questions, put something on Twitter, put something in the comments box below the page. Subscribe, and hopefully I will see you all again soon. Thank you, and stay beautiful.